We don't trust you. Too many citizens in this state don't trust you. A government unchecked, a government willing to defy our Constitution is a government that is completely out of control. So you can sit here and dictate whatever you want today. Maybe the political winds are in your favor here today, but I can tell you that we will not comply, and you're not going to do a darn thing about it, because the law, the Constitution, and the founding principles are on our side.
That's State Representative Blaine Wilhauer last night on the House floor before the gun ban and registry passed, and also before Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the measure into law. And it's time now for you to sound off at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number again, 217-629-7970. It is now illegal in the state of Illinois to buy or sell certain types of semi-automatic weapons and magazines of more than 10 rounds for long guns, more than 15 rounds for handguns, and also you're going to be required to register your already legally purchased semi-automatic guns on a list that the state police apparently are going to be able to change whenever they see fit through rule changes as to which guns are on the list and which guns are not on the list. So interesting to see if that's going to be communicated and how that's going to be communicated. If state police next year say all of a sudden, now we're going to add all of these guns to the list that need to be registered, what happens then? So you've got this now signed into law, and Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday, after signing it, talking about what we heard from Blaine Wilhauer, but also what you heard from State Senator Darren Bailey, that they don't plan on complying. And actually, our daily poll question at WMAY.com asks you if you plan on complying. And that has flipped to most of you saying, no, you won't comply with this. But here's Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday reacting to the question of how does he plan on enforcing this, especially if you've got sanctuary counties for Second Amendment, you've got prosecutors who don't want to enforce this. You've got counties across the state who have stood up and opposed this measure even before it came out with your Second Amendment sanctuary status. Here's Governor Pritzker reacting to some of that.
Well, you don't get to choose which laws you comply with in the state of Illinois. Let's be clear. The fact is that, yes, there are, of course, people who are trying to politically grandstand, who want to make a name for themselves by claiming that they will not comply. But the reality is that the state police is responsible for enforcement, as are all law enforcement all across this state. And they will, in fact, do their job, or they won't be in their job. Well, remember that anybody who doesn't comply, there are consequences for that. So, we've given people, I think, a year. We're at about a year, right, for people to comply, to fill out the paperwork and so on, and we expect them to do that.
So you do have that year, January 1st, 2024 is the deadline for you to submit records to Illinois State Police, and they can start taking those records October 1st. But the gun rights groups, they vowed to sue. They plan on suing next week. We talked with Gun Save Life Executive Director John Bach earlier this morning, and he said that they anticipate that lawsuit as early as next week, with injunctive relief granted by the courts as early as February to block this. They fully predict that that's going to happen based off of recent U.S. Supreme Court decisions. But I want to get your thoughts now at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number. Again, 217-629-7970. I've also got the email open, bishoponair@gmail.com. Got at least one message there we'll talk about, but get your thoughts. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hi, good morning. I think it'll be very easy to enforce it. I mean, all they got to do, because obviously rules or laws are followed in Illinois, they just do it just like they do the immigration law. I mean, there's no better example to follow a law than to do exactly what you do with immigration, and look how well it's worked. I mean, not only for Illinois, but for the nation, how they followed that law and stopped immigration. So I look for this to be a huge success if they just follow their own guidelines.
I definitely pick up on a little bit of sarcasm there, but yes, we have immigration laws that even the government doesn't seem to be following. You've got Illinois not complying with federal immigration laws with their various measures that say that local law enforcement can't cooperate with federal law enforcement when it comes to immigration. But is that mixing apples and oranges here? Maybe not. I mean, we're talking about compliance with laws, right? Isn't that the crux of all of this? All right, let's get to more of your calls at 217-629-7970. Good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
My name is Stephen Sennett, and I was calling in about the bill that passed in Congress, the State Congress of Illinois.
In the General Assembly, you are on the radio. Good morning.
Okay. First thing, as a citizen of Illinois and a gun owner in Illinois, I would like to actually call for the immediate arrest and demand they be charged with acts of tyranny and acts of treason against the Constitution of the United States. Because what they are trying to do is they're defying the Constitution of the United States, which was written by the people against the government to restrict the government, not to restrict the people.
And that's been an argument a lot of even lawmakers that oppose this used on the floor in debate, that those who vote for this are violating their oath of office to uphold the not Illinois Constitution only, but also the U.S. Constitution. Appreciate the call. We're getting more of them. Good morning. You're on WMAY. Oh, we would have been there. Let's go to this one. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hi, it's David from Chicago again. How are you doing?
Hey, it's good to hear from you. Well, we saw it yesterday. It happened. And what's your reaction?
Well, I think the Senate floor debate and then on the House, Rep. Ms. Sochi, I'm sure I'm butchering her name, gave a master class in the case law that's going to be used to overturn this law.
You're talking about Deanne Mazzocchi?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think what Bob Morgan and Welch are failing to tell their constituents is that once this law is overturned on Second Amendment grounds, not only will it overturn this new law, but it will also overturn all the more restrictive municipal ordinances. So that those ordinances in Highland Park, Cook County, Oak Park that ban assault weapons and quote-unquote high-capacity magazines, those will be nullified once the court overturns this specific law. So they're going to actually end up worse off than they were before this law was passed.
Well, at least those who want more gun control would be worse off. Those who advocate for gun rights, I imagine they'd be better off?
Yes, and this is something I was talking about with, kind of within a gun group that I'm part of last night, is that there's actually green shoots to this passing because it accelerates what was already happening in the state. There were already lawsuits challenging the Highland Park and Cook County assault weapon and capacity limit bans. This just rolls all of those cases up with a statewide ban, which I think accelerates the nullification of those local ordinances.
Yeah. Well, listen, I appreciate the call. We will be talking about this in a lot more extensive detail with a lot of your reaction, but I also want to bring on experts and lawyers to talk about all of this because we're going to follow this all the way through. Obviously, the lawsuits have yet to be filed. Expect those to be filed soon, and you can expect some kind of injunctive relief being requested, immediate injunctive relief, a restraining order. And then if the governor wants to take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, I think that's possible. It could happen. You mentioned Deanne Mazzocchi last night on the House floor. Here's some of what she had to say to Bob Morgan and speaking to the bill.
Illinois, historically, we've passed all sorts of gun-related legislation, and historically, courts have repeatedly struck that legislation down. So if you want to argue why are we not seeing any change on this type of issue when it comes to the state of Illinois, it's because this legislature continues to enact legislation that is patently unconstitutional, is not going to work, is not going to actually stop violence in this instance. All it's going to do is give the courts an excuse to strike down yet another piece of gun legislation. So you all keep saying that you want to have common sense gun legislation. The only way you're going to have legislation that is going to pass constitutional muster is to focus on conduct of an individual, is to focus on things that actually are, for lack of a better phrase, outside the historical norm for the Second Amendment. And what you've thrown into this piece of legislation here guarantees it's going to be stricken down. So because I don't think it's a good idea for all of us who have actually taken an oath to say we are swearing to uphold the Constitution and the standards that it offers, every time you do this, you basically make a mockery of that oath. Thank you.
So again, that was Deanne Mazzocchi on the House floor yesterday, reacting to the bill, saying that it's not going to stand legal muster. But Governor J.B. Pritzker last night, he sounded confident that this will, but he also seemed to be talking a lot about national politics, which, you know, since he got the second term and even before then, people were asking, is he running for president? Well, I'll let you hear what he had to say about all of this, especially on a national level, and whether or not that indicates to you that he's seeking to possibly head to the White House, with this being one of the planks for a presidential bid.
It shouldn't have to be that way, but, you know, unfortunately there are pro-NRA governors in at least half the states in the country. There are pro-NRA legislators in the House of Representatives, which is now in the hands of those pro-NRA legislators.
And he's talking about the efforts to try
almost
to
half of the United States Senate. So
get this passed on a federal level, and the efforts underway.
I don't know what it's going to take for them to move on it. What I know is that I'm going to do everything I can now and going forward to make sure that the Congress passes an assault weapons ban. It worked in the 90s. It worked. The statistics don't lie. So why won't they pass it now? It's because of the gun lobby. That's the reason. Well, we've shown that you can overcome the gun lobby. We've shown that here in Illinois. We can do that nationally, too. You may be surprised to know I actually do talk about this all the time with people outside of the state of Illinois. But yes, of course, when for example, there's a National Governors Association meeting in February that I'll be at, I'll be talking to members. This is often a one-on-one kind of discussion. And yes, there are 535 members of Congress and 50 governors, but it is that personal connection with people and talking to them about what's possible in their states that they can get done that I think moves the ball. So I'll continue to do that. I think you know about me that I sort of never stop working. And I do think that on a national level, people ought to follow our lead.
So Governor J.B. Pritzker last night signing that measure into law. We'll obviously talk about this a lot more tomorrow in the days ahead, in the weeks ahead, in the months ahead. The Second Amendment, of course, is the well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that was, a topic of discussion, 250 plus years ago, even before that. But now it's obviously a topic of discussion here in Illinois. Appreciate everybody chiming in on this, but we got to take a